Power. Many years ago, 1957, a great paper was written, and they called it The Five Bases of Power. It probably is one of the most seminal works of all time when it comes down to this topic. A lot of people have used that research and then created research on their own on a related topic to it, and use this as a primary point as to how people can use power for good or for bad. You need to know about this, because if you're going to ever be successful in the world of leadership, you need to know how to properly use it, what are the good aspects of it and the bad aspects of it. But also, when somebody's using power on you, you need to be aware of what's going on in the world and not get blindsided in the process. So power really is about a person, team, or organization that influences others. By the way, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's something that somebody's using to achieve a personal objective. You want to change attitudes or behavior. Okay, so with that, sometimes you have to exercise power over your employees, saying, this is the behavior I want you to have when you're doing this. I want it done this over here. One time I walked into my dentist's office, and my dentist is leaning up against the wall. I says, what are you doing? He says, I'm listening to make certain my hygienist is doing what I told her to do on her speech. I says, so you're spying on her? She says, you're darn right I am. I said, don't you think that's unethical? He says, when he walked in the door, whose name was on the door? He says, well, yours. I want to make sure she's conveying my message to the patients that come in that door. Okay, you can't argue with that. His name is on that door, and for him, that was important to the point that he had the right to direct his employees to do what he expected them to do. That's not necessarily power, but it is power. But he was well within his rights to exercise it exactly that way. So based upon their perception, the power holder controls a valuable resource. In this case, the resource was money for her salary to be a dental hygienist. So a lot of the power requires some level of trust by both parties, whether it's a great amount or a little amount. We'll talk about the five bases because they kind of are different in the aspect of the trust that's involved. And power involves unequal dependence. So let's talk about it. Okay, so you got person A, the power holder, and person B is the one the power is being exercised on. So you got person B, okay, and they're controlling resources that help or can hinder person B's goal achievement. So it just depends what's involved. Sometimes you get feedback from person B saying, I don't want to do it this way, I want to do something else. I'd rather do this. So you have different aspects of it, but overall is trying to exercise power to get people to do things you want them to do. And it can be done in a positive or negative way. The five bases of power are here where it says sources of power: legitimate, reward, coercive, expert, and referent. So you have that, and then you have a little bit of contingencies of power. By contingencies means other options that are involved. So non-suitability, centrality, discretion, visibility, and then overall you have power over others. Sometimes people have a zone of indifference. When we talk about legitimate power, you occupy a chair. You own the company. You are appointed to be the boss of an area. But sometimes people don't care who you are. They just want to do the things they want to do. And you'll have to exercise power in a different way from your legitimate position. There's several factors out there that influence the size of what we call the zone of indifference. Sometimes you have to rattle them up. You know what? I noticed that you have this same thing, you're following the same format, and you and I have talked about this. Okay, I want this format changed, and I want you to change the following thing. When we collect the information, I want this information. We've already disbanded the other form. Oh, I'm sorry, it was a mistake. I said, this is the second time you had the mistake. I don't want to have this discussion a third time. I hope I'm clear. Okay, they do it a third time. You know what? We had the discussion now. This is the third time. Okay, so now you're going to be without a paycheck for a week. It's called the suspension. What? I didn't mean to. I said, but I told you, and you're still doing it. Sometimes you got to do that, or the reprimand, or whatever it may be. The zone of indifference, sometimes you have to rattle that zone of indifference. So sometimes if there's reciprocity, sometimes you have that coming back to you for good and for bad. You know, here's a good thing. If you do this, you'll have an opportunity over here. Sometimes in the legitimate thing, you have the ability to control the information. I thought I'd give you a heads up on this one over here. Okay. Sometimes you do it even though you don't have authority over them, but by that position, you may have that. So sometimes you have power through gatekeeping and framing, I'll mention it to the boss. Okay, so you and I, we're good in this. This is what I'm going to say, and also you open the door for somebody else. Legitimate power is the most legitimate one because it is there by right, by accordance to the position. You now have a series of other types of power that branch off of that, and often when used to facilitate the legitimate power, they're more powerful because you have multiple tools of power. The expert power. Every organization has somebody that's in the back, and people go and they go talk to that person, and they may even take the boss's direction, say, the boss had to do this. What do you think? How should I go about doing this? They'll go to the person they perceive as the most knowledgeable or the most expert. And even though that person may not occupy any legitimate position, they're an expert and they're so good at it, people trust them and they go to him for advice as to how about dealing with something. So to cope with uncertainty, they may not know what to do. Oh, we did that years ago, and here's what happened over there. You may want to mention that, or they may say, okay, you do it this way over here. Or they get online because they want to maintain that expert power status, so people come to them. People like being respected, so the expert may do all kinds of things to remain the expert. People gain power this way by using expertise to prevent changes around them, especially in the environment they work in, to forecast what it's going to be, and to absorb the different environmental changes. You'll see different things, the experts especially, they're on top of information to be the person that people come to. It's a very, very strong power because people respect it. Reward power. Sometimes you control the rewards that others value. Reward isn't always money. Sometimes it's just recognition. It could be a matter of removing negative sanctions. But if you have the power to reward, that's a really excellent tool to use on different situations. Now, here's the problem with reward power. Once you turn on the faucet tap of reward and you turn it on, you may have a hard time turning it off. Once upon a time, I had a son who played soccer, and he wanted to be a goalkeeper of all things. Oh my gosh. Goalkeepers are loved by the team unless they lose, and they're blamed by the team. So they're a hero or a dog, although I do like dogs. Okay, but regardless, okay, so I bribed him. Yes, I was one of those parents. $1 for a win, $3 for a shutout. Oh, yeah, he got older. It was then $5 for a shutout and $3 for a win. Well, he got older again. He's in junior high school. Now it's $10 for a shutout and $5 for a win. So it's starting to cost some serious cash. He got to high school. He negotiated for $20 for a shutout and $10 for a win. I said, no, $15 for a shutout and $7.50 for a win. And then he got to college. He's playing at college. He started says, well, I want to negotiate. I said, no more. You need to sit down and do it for the rewards, the intrinsic rewards inside of you, besides money. Anyway, reward power, sometimes you can't turn off that spigot once you start offering bonuses, once you start offering financial incentives, it can be very difficult. Another power is coercive power. You do it or I'm going to fire you. Oh, by the way, that's scary. Okay, that is really ruling by fear. The ability to apply punishment, and it could be apply punishment to future employment too. One time I had a part-time faculty member, and he threw an after-cast party at his house where they had underage drinking. Now, sometimes you can't control things and sometimes you can. So I brought him in the office and I said, okay, you're a part-time faculty member, and here's the concern I have. This is what I heard happened over here. We had this, I got a formal complaint from somebody saying that somebody attempted to rape her in the process. I says, all this happened at your house after an activity by the college. Now, just so you know, okay, I am wired throughout the entire state. I know just about every single college and everything else. If anything like this ever happens again, okay, I'm just going to tell you, and I'll be right up front with you, you get fired from here. I said, this is just a part-time job. It's not a full-time job. I says, but the other part is, in the meantime, I didn't really notice it. I just saw beads of sweat beating up on his forehead. I says, and I'll tell all of them what you did here. Whoa, okay, I got it. And so he never had a party again at his house with our students' involvement, and there was no more underage drinking. And also the secret meeting of somebody trying to grab one of the gals, that stopped altogether. That coercive power can be very, very powerful if you use it just right. In that moment, I was brilliant, not all the time, but in that case. Referent power. Sometimes you influence others through identification because of the power holder. Sometimes there are people that you just like and you want to be like them or do what they say because you like it. They have a certain amount of charisma that goes with it. Sometimes you sit back and you want to defer to power and not say anything, and you just kind of mindlessly follow people because they're in charge and they must be in charge for a reason. People stop thinking sometimes. Frankly, I hope you don't do that. You're taking this class, you're coming to college, and the fact you're taking this class, knowing it has an impact on your future career pathway, means you're pretty smart. Pay attention to power, make certain that you agree with it. If you're being led down the wrong path, sometimes you got to speak up and squeak. Sometimes you have to lead the organization too. So our tendency is to follow people that are charismatic, but always pay attention to power. The 5 bases of power, know them because they're going to be used on you sometime in your career pathway, and you want to be prepared for them. Coercive, ruling with fear. Reward, ruling by giving people things. Legitimate, because you own the position. Referent, because of the fact people follow that person because they have a strong desire to follow them and please that person. Expert, because they want to go out and be the most knowledgeable person so people will listen to them and they become an expert power base. With that, here's the 5 bases of power. Know them, not just for this class, but for life. It'll help you. 5 bases of power. Take care.